3 minutes, okay. 3 minutes? 30 seconds. Could everybody take their seats, please?
Seats, everyone, and phones off, please. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Truro Town Council's Committee of the Whole for Thursday, March 19th, 2026. I would like to begin with the land acknowledgement. I, Kathy J. Henton, Mayor for the Town of Truro, acknowledge we are Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the peace and friendship treaties and recognize we are all treaty people. We recognize African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched this part of Mi'kmaq known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We recognize the Acadians who lived in harmony with the Mi'kmaq, whose communities across the province are a living testament to the fortitude of their ancestors who survived the Grand Arrangement. Today, as both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, we commit to seek harmonious and mutually beneficial relationships. We give thanks to the elders and to the knowledge keepers. Council, the first item is the approval of today's agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda for today? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item 2 is the approval of the draft minutes of the whole minutes from February 19th, 2026, Committee of the Whole meeting. You've had the chance to review them. Are there any changes to be made? Seeing none, the minutes of February 19th, 2026 are approved. We're now moving on to item number 3, which is the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society. And today we are very pleased to have Nick Sharp join us in council chambers. Welcome, Nick. Have a seat. And if you just push the button there, and it'll put your light on. There we go. We're getting ready for the presentation.
Oh, there it is.
And it's very nice to see you again, Mr. Sharp, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Mayor Hinton, and thank you, members of council, for allowing me the time to come in here and give an update today. Just waiting for is the presentation? It's on the desktop. Oh, it's on the desktop. Okay, I'll open it up and we'll get started here, folks. Yeah, so I am the new Executive Director of the Central Nova Scotia Tourism Development Society, where the name's a work in progress, so bear with us there. And I joined the society in November as the Executive Director. I've actually had the pleasure of working in the region here in Central Nova Scotia for over 10 years. Some of that work has been within our regional event attraction work, and I came back because I still, as all you do, see the potential in this region on the tourism front, and I'm really excited to get to play this new role and continue with that work. So today I'm in here just to give a high-level progress recap of what got us from the beginning up to this point, and then I want to dive into our operating budget and our business plan coming into next fiscal. And then we'll dive into high-level financial overview. All right, so up until, how did we get to today? So back in February 2025, we finalized the STEP strategy. So that's the Strategic Tourism Expansion Plan strategy. There's some folks behind me actually in the room that played a major role in the development of that strategy. And of course, Allison Grant was one of the leaders within the development of that strategy too, along with her counterparts, a number of stakeholders from across the region. And then in July 2025, one of the recommendations of that strategy was to operationalize the leadership model, which is now the society. So the society board was developed and the governance was created. This past October, the society was actually incorporated officially, and then in November, I was hired as the executive director. So from November to now, we're really focused on the early startup phases of our organization. We're very much in our infancy stage, so we're focused on building our governance policies and procedures, starting that important stakeholder outreach work that's so critical right now at this phase. We've developed a policy roadmap that brings us through the next 12 months that prioritizes our governance, fiduciary, and operational policies for the organization to ensure we're taking a governance first approach to this work. We got started right away on fleshing out our operating budget to bring us to the end of this fiscal. And we've already taken on some event attraction efforts, which I'll talk about a little down the road here. And we prioritized developing our event funding program and framework and policy as one of the major priorities for us up front. And of course, as we'll talk about today, we developed our business plan and operating budget and had that approved at our last meeting for the fiscal year ahead of us in 26-27. So we are the new destination marketing organization for the Central Nova Scotia region. Of course, as you know, we have an operating agreement, and this is a partnership between the town of Truro, the county of Colchester, town of Stewiacke, and Millbrook First Nation. And our mandate at its core, at the core of any DMO, is to grow tourism and visitation within a region. Our specific mandate, as listed in our operating agreement, is that we'll invest about 50% of our funding, any funding that the society gets through the new tourism levy, into growing leisure tourism, and then the remaining 50% into events. And those events can be categorized as event development and growth, and that could be smaller and moderate and standard type events, and then 25% into major and strategic event hosting. So this is what we aim for relative to allocation of the funding. So we'll move on into the business plan. We've created 3 pillars in the business plan leading into next year, just to respect and realize our infancy stage that we're in right now. So those pillars include operationalizing the society, I suppose continuing to operationalize the society. Of course, our main core, destination development, and enabling event hosting as well. I've said the word infancy a couple times, and I'll continue to. It really is a foundational build year for us as the society, as I'm sure you can all imagine. So we've identified a few major projects that will enable us to successfully and effectively transition into destination development and promotion. So those include a corporate strategy development, looking at our brand development, doing some destination mapping, taking a regional approach. And then ultimately all this work will lead into developing a destination level website that will be the vehicle in which we promote our region. So just to clarify, we have the STEP plan, the Strategic Tourism Expansion Plan. That's not the plan of the society, that's the plan of the region. So what that did, we had all these stakeholders come together and they identified some major themes, tourism themes of our region and our visitor touch points, took a data-informed approach to a number of recommendations. So the conclusion is about a dozen recommendations. The leadership model is one of those. But those aren't recommendations for the society. I think the point here is that tourism doesn't happen in a silo, right? We all have a role to play, and us as the DMO now, we can come and kind of be the glue and liaison to help pull that work together and to live into that STEP strategy. So our corporate strategy is what will guide the society and the DMO. So we really need to clearly define our mandate and our scope of service to determine what we do and what we don't do, and ensure that we're respecting the Municipal Governance Act, which dictates how we can spend that money as to be directed towards tourism promotion. Just a few milestones, again, still within the organizational excellence pillar here. We'll formally adopt our core governance policies, and we're actively doing that work now. We'll formally adopt the corporate strategy once we undertake that project. We'll formally adopt and launch our event investment policy, and I'll guide us through some of that work that we've done here today. And we'll hold our first annual general meeting, and as per our operating agreement, we'll take on our first financial audit. Sector and alignment and industry engagement is so critical for any DMO and any public-facing organization for that matter, but especially for us in our infancy. It's so critical that we demonstrate value back for these tourism dollars that we're collecting. So we've built that into our business plan for this next year and the years ahead. So we've already implemented a quarterly newsletter that we're working on building up for all of our stakeholders across the region to keep everyone informed and opportunities, whether it's provincial or federal opportunities or opportunities that we create at the society level, and to help share the stories of the good work happening in our region right now. Industry representation is so critical as well. I had the pleasure last week of attending the Sport Tourism Canada Sports Events Congress to represent our region, where I met with several national rights holders and other DMOs to build up that network and sustain that success on the sport tourism front. Moving into the second pillar here in destination development. So this, again, this is really focusing on some foundational projects, the brand development piece, the experience mapping, and the destination website development. All that work needs to be done, and that will all funnel into effective destination promotion as we transition out of our infancy stage. So to talk a little bit about each of those projects, the brand development piece, we have currently the brand for the region is Explore Central NS. I mentioned the leaders behind me, and I'll mention them again. The Chamber of Commerce was actually led this initiative back, I think, around 5 years ago to create this brand to be a channel and a catalyst for tourism for the region, so that we could effectively send our message out to tourists outside the region. And this was done and filled an important gap, but we now have an opportunity in front of us now that we have the STEP strategy and we have our DMO or leadership model in place to take a data and strategic approach to the brand and determine if this is going to be our long-term brand that represents the region, or if this evolves into something else. So we're going to undertake that project, which will inform how effective we are in promoting the region moving forward. And then we'll move into destination mapping. So this is really all about the good work that's being done and all the assets that we have throughout the region currently as they exist, taking them and packaging those experiences in our accommodations offerings. We have really unique accommodations offerings in our region, as you all know as well, into sellable products. So this is a project we'll undertake after the branding and as part of the branding process that will enable us to move toward that final project for this fiscal year, which is the destination level development website. So again, on the Explore Central, the Chamber and a number of other stakeholders came together to create that brand and some assets so that we as a region were able to share our story, and part of that was the development of Explore Central NS. And this was great to fill the gap, but now that we have these tourism resources so that we can take an intentional and strategic approach to how we promote the region, we have an opportunity to build a really robust, functional, destination-level website that would ensure we have brand relevance and build in functionality that's important to bridge us to our experience providers and build in the analytics that we need to measure the actual investments that we make and all sorts of other functionality we would look for in a website. And all that, again, will lead to effective destination promotion, which is at the core of what we do at the DMO. But we're not going to halt, we're not waiting on promoting the region. In fact, we've been promoting through the Explore Central digital platforms. Even the last few months, we were promoting winter tourism for visitors to come out and explore Central NS. We actually, next fiscal, within our plan, we applied for a Tourism Nova Scotia digital content marketing program, which is a dollar match for match program to execute some campaigns and to build content creation. And we focus those on experience clusters with throughout seasonal campaigns, focusing on spring, fall, and winter and those off-peak and shoulder seasons. And we continue to invest in the Explore Essential platforms and remain active on those as we transition. And we're also partnering with the Chamber to ensure we continue the great tourism guide that we do to promote the region on an annual basis as well. Experience collaboration also so critical at this phase of our organization. So within the plan, we'll execute some stakeholder engagement events, networking events for the tourism sector here in the region. We also have in our plan to execute some FAM tours, and this is all about increasing the knowledge base of our frontline staff that work in the hospitality sector, so ensure that they have good knowledge and can experience the experiences that we have to offer here in Central NS, so that they can sell them and we can upsell visitors when they come visit Central Nova Scotia. Really important to have two-way communication. So we're building those tools or those avenues in to ensure that we're well connected with our variety of tourism stakeholders throughout the region. All right, switching gears into events. So we do have a few KPIs within our business plan around events. Of course, within our operating budget, within our operating agreement, event attraction is listed as part of our roles and responsibilities, as it is with all destination marketing organizations. So this year in our budget, we think that there's a few things I'll go through. So major event hosting process map. We do see the establishment of the DMO as an opportunity for us to stop and bring all of our stakeholders together and do some role clarity and process mapping on how we go about attracting and securing major events and funding for major events, and what does that process actually looks like, who needs to be involved at what step of the process. It never can happen in a silo, but now we have these additional resources with our mandate to help support this work. We've had a lot of people doing great work in this space throughout the last several years, as we all know. So it's not about maintaining or taking control over event attraction. It's just about figuring out what the event ecosystem looks like in regional Nova Scotia, in central Nova Scotia now, with our new mandate and us at the table now, taking a destination level lens to events. We have a KPI around the sustainability of our signature events. So I came here today, of course, to share all the positive updates and the plans for the future for the society, because there is a lot of positive things happening. And of course, as I mentioned, event attraction is a part of our mandate, and our signature events are an important part of our tourism sector in this region. So all I would say today, that I think we really are in a pivotal moment where we need to take a coordinated and collective and collaborative approach to this work. I think that work does really start right now in order for us to rebuild and sustain the level of success that we've had and the economic and tourism impact that's come along with that success. And I look forward to being called upon to support that work and to help come together with all our stakeholders and our decision makers. One thing that was highlighted in the STEP strategy was the potential of our Winter Long John Festival, and it actually recommended we explore how we can expand that, whether it's through duration or increase it. That I think the organizers, the town of Truro, primarily the recreation staff, have done a phenomenal job with that event, and with the scope being primarily focused on the local community. But I think all stakeholders see that as an opportunity to grow into a real, true tourism asset. So we've dedicated some funds and have already started to work with the recreation department, along with the other rec departments that come together to plan and execute that event, to see how we can evolve and grow that into next year. That's a really tangible event that has a lot of potential. There's no better more suited region than ours to have Nova Scotia signature winter festival here, and we've gathered already some data and some insights from other festivals in other regions that we hope to execute here. So that's an important piece of our business plan, and of course the province's strategy is to lean into winter and all seasons tourism, and so is our STEP strategy. So there's a lot of synergies and alignment and potential for that event. And hosting Nova Scotia Music Week, I hope you've all seen the announcement that we're hosting Nova Scotia Music Week again this fall. So I mentioned that I worked in the region, and I had the pleasure of being part of that event back when it was hosted in years prior. We hosted that event 5 times, I believe, in the last 10 years now, but we haven't hosted in the last 5 years. This is a great example of how a DMO can help benefit our event ecosystem. When we hosted that in years prior, in my previous role, I would come and municipalities would be requested to make an investment in that event, but because of these new tourism dollars being generated through the tourism levy and through the society, we were able to secure a host agreement directly with Music Nova Scotia, and we're really looking forward to hosting that for the first time in 5 years this fall in partnership with the Marigold Cultural Centre, who's going to play an active role in helping us plan and execute the event, so thanks to them as well. And then finally, within our business plan, we'll launch our event investment program, framework, and policy, and I'll talk about that in my remaining time here. So when we talk about event attraction as a DMO, I want to be clear up front that our role isn't just to be passive and have an application and wait for applications to come in and fund events. That's not the purpose of it. We're strategic investors in growing tourism in the region, whether it's on the leisure market side or the event investment side. So we will have a program that we've been working diligently on that we actually just approved at the board level, that will enable us to fund some tourism-facing events throughout the region, all for the purpose of growing tourism outcomes. But those events, we've created the criteria and the evaluation and the objectives of that program all around tourism outcomes. So they must demonstrate tourism impact and include a marketing plan reaching out of region audiences, and provide a balanced, reasonable budget, which may include a legacy plan to grow our tourism capacity or our community. This program isn't intended to subsidize events. So I tend to say that we're in the business of buying tourism outcomes. That's what we're interested in. So the program is quite specific in that we may not be here to subsidize the event. We may accomplish that at the end of the day, but we're really interested in partnering and investing in items within an event that will help elevate the tourism experience, convince or allow for people to stay in our region longer, stay overnight, become more of a tourism draw, to draw people in, or to help directly market to people, or to take on some partnership activations with tourism operators here now to connect them with participants. There's all kinds of ways we can appropriately engage and elevate an event, but taking a data-informed approach and ensuring that it supports tourism outcomes. Our framework, I won't go too far into the weeds here. I want to respect my time, but just to give everybody a high-level idea right now, is based around categorizing events. And when I talk about event, we're talking about business events and conferences, sporting events, cultural events, festivals, major sporting events, events of all signature events and emerging events, newer event models. So events of all sizes and natures that support tourism. So we've categorized it into 4 tiers. My next slide, I'll make this a little more clear, but Tier 1 and Tier 2 events are more smaller, standard size events, and they really support the event development and growth mandate, the 25% that I showed at the top of the presentation. And then Tier 3 and Tier 4 are major events and strategic hosted events, and they're more in line with the major and strategic hosted events allocation of our mandate within that 25%. So the way we categorize these is Tier 1 is by event budget. So Tier 1 is $5,000 to $25,000, and we'll allocate or we'll approve up to 20% of an event. So we're interested in supporting models that have sustainability as well and that have other revenue sources. And then Tier 2 is $25,000 to $125,000. Same thing, up to 20% with a maximum of $25,000 per application per event. And then Tier 3 gets into the major event category, and that is $125,000 plus event. And that max should say $50,000, and it's consistent with the 20% contribution. And then tier 4 is for our bidded events. So again, we're not within tier 4. We're not passively waiting for a group to put a bid in. We're hoping to collaborate and partner with a group to see if if it's within the strategy, if we have the infrastructure to partner with the bid itself to try to get the funding pieces together and take a collaborative approach to putting a bid in and making sure that we can fiscally plan for it. So this one's a little bit more flexible based on just the nature of the criteria and the requirements of those types of major events. I'm talking events like the World Under-17 Hockey Challenge and World Junior A Challenge and Nova Scotia Music Week and so on. Really important throughout this framework that we have our core mandate top of mind, which is to maximize our tourism outcomes. So although we have our mandate and we have our targets within how we allocate that funding within events, we do have it built into our framework that we need to remain strategic and nimble so that we can support events and initiatives that bring the highest level of return for investment, the highest level of tourism and economic impact. And of course, we know that events can ebb and flow from year to year. We might have major opportunities one year and then not the next year. And events require investment. So we've kind of built that into the framework to ensure that we can stay strategic. I talked a little bit about evaluation of what types of events and the rationale of why we're hoping to invest in some of the great events happening throughout the region. And we clearly define this within our framework. So 30% towards tourism impact, 20% in economic impact. Those two are of course correlated. Tourism is, are we bringing increasing visitation, and economic impact is how much money are they spending when they're in the region. But then that's not all that we look at when we measure the impact of an event relative to tourism. We look at community benefit and legacy, right? There can be amazing legacies that we've realized in this region from events of all sizes. And marketing and visibility. I mean, some of the events that we've hosted were broadcast nationally across the country, and that comes with tremendous value for the region as well. And then, of course, we look at organizational capacity and risk, which includes safety and financial risk. So the next steps for that program, we actually adopted the policy. We approved the policy last month. We're actively working on our application form and finalizing that. And at the board level, we're creating the terms of reference for the committee. There will be a review committee. We're calling it the Event Investment Committee. And then we'll nominate members into that committee so that we can formalize the actual decision-making process. And then we're aiming to launch the initial intake in May. Moving into our financial overview, again, just really high level here. We primarily were funded through the tourism levy, but we have applied for some grants, so we expect some revenue to come in federally and provincially as well. And I think we're just scratching the surface of the programs that could be available to us. With one of the benefits of a regional DMO is that we get to work directly with Tourism Nova Scotia and at the federal level to take a destination level lens at how we can ensure that the tourism sector is properly supported here. So I think there's going to be lots of opportunities now that we have this society established. And that on the right just gives you an idea of going back to one of the initial slides, which is our allocation, the 50% and then 25% into events. That is within our operating agreement, so we're committed to staying true to that, and we built our operating budget around that mandate, and this just is a pie chart showing just that. Again, we're focused on, in this early stage, maintaining fiduciary and good fiscal management for the organization around the board table and at the staff level. So we've mapped out our expected revenue and expenses based around everything I just told you about around those projects in the business plan, and we presented a balanced budget for next year that was approved at the board table. And this is just this is what we're allocating to the 2 event allocations, just in the actual total value. So we have about 93,000 in event development and growth, and 88,000 and 89,000 in major and strategic event hosting. Some of this is budgeted, but some of it is unallocated because we're preparing to launch our application form. So we have an envelope for applications within all of those tiers of funding that I told you about, so that we can support events of all sizes that are, of course, tourism facing, as I discussed. And then some of it is dedicated towards growing the Winter Festival and investing in Nova Scotia Music Week. That concludes the update today. I do apologize. I know I talked quite fast there, but I was trying to respect the time here today and your following presentation. But I would like to open it up to any questions. I can't commit that if I don't have the answer for you today, I can circle back and certainly provide some more information.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And when we started the dreaming of this tourism levy and this all came, this was years in the making. And, you know, we have to have a vision and move forward. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but let's just pretend this is like our Star Trek, to bravely go where no one's gone before. Looking at a year ahead, what's your vision? What do you see? What's your big thing that you're seeing in a year if we move ahead?
That's a big question.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope I can confidently say we're out of our infancy stage, and we have those tools, those foundational tools in place that I had talked about, and that we're actively supporting our tourism operators in ways that bring more people to the region. I hope what I can say as well is that we're truly entering collaboration where we're all coming to the table and we're all doing our part. So the STEP strategy, for instance, references, one of the recommendations is to address service and infrastructure gaps. So our DMO can play a role in that, in identifying what those gaps are. We can get people here, we can promote the region, but it's not up to us if the visitor has a great experience, or if they can access amenities that they need to, or if they can walk down the street without, you know, something in good standing, or just many examples, or if there's wayfinding signage. There's so many aspects to this that really truly take a holistic approach, and for us all to come to the table and ensure that we're all investing with the same priorities in mind, that we're speaking the same language. And I hope that in a year from now, we're in the midst of that work and all moving together.
Thank you. And, you know, we have to have that vision. We have to move forward. And I know you've got that. And as I'm looking in the chamber today, and I see our friends from Truro Colchester Partnership for Economic Prosperity, TCPEP, and the Chamber of Commerce, we are so fortunate in this community to have these partners with us, visionaries, hard workers, and moving us forward. We're very, very fortunate to have that. And it means so much. Now I see a couple questions are on the horizon. Councillor McGrath, you're up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Sharp, for your presentation. Really interesting stuff. Absolutely pro-collaboration, and again, echoing the Mayor's comments about the wonderful folks behind you. Looking at the funds, you said you'd probably be able to start getting your application process done in May of this year?
Yeah, we hope to actually launch it in May so that people can start applying in May.
How soon do you think you'd be able to start dispersing funds? Because you had a revenue chart there, you've got your balanced budget by the board. At what point do you think you'd be ready to start handing out money to event organizers, or supporting the events, I guess, not necessarily just handing it directly?
Yeah, we'll move as quickly as possible. So the different tiers have different decision-making criteria. So lower tiers will be able to expedite some review and approval, where the higher tiers requiring more investment might take the committee approach, which may take a little bit longer. We have in our application that it could be up to 90 days before a response, but that certainly is far beyond the target for this first year. We see this as, I personally see this as one of the major priorities. That's why we spent so much time on it, to make sure that we, and from my perspective anyway, get the framework right to be able to make a big difference. So I feel confident that once we start getting applications, we'll be able to prioritize them really quickly and get some money out the door for the summer.
Excellent. That sounds very positive. I just want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, because I think I'm guilty of this. conferences. I think a lot of us forget that conferences are such a great tourism opportunity, and I'm guilty of that despite going to conferences. And I guess maybe I'm not as much of a tourist as I should be when I go to these things, something I had to work on. But I'm just thinking about anybody who may have applied to the town through municipal grants for conferences or anything. That might be something that probably would be better suited from the Tourism Society.
Yeah, absolutely. If it has tourism outcomes, like we've built our scoring matrix, we're building all this framework so that we can evaluate all these types of events. I think that there's so much potential in the business events market here in the region for a lot of different reasons, just geographically, and we have the assets to support these. We should be taking an active approach to trying to grow that market. I was just chatting with my colleague David behind me actually an hour ago about just this. A lot of potential there, so that's an important part of our strategy moving forward, I think.
Oh, tons of potential. Thank you very much.
Councillor Graham?
I just have one question. I really like that you're data-driven, and I really like that you have a matrix to evaluate how you're going to invest and all of that. I was wondering, is there someone or a part of the evaluation system that considers EDIA, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility when you're considering investing?
Yeah, it's within our framework for sure. It's not listed as part of the evaluation criteria specifically, because again, our mandate supports tourism, but we're also committed to working with equity-seeking groups and ensure that we're effectively supporting all of our communities, especially those that need our support.
Yeah, I think it's an important lens when we're doing any kind of evaluating of investing in any way, that we have that in the matrix at some level, at some point. And my only other question was, are you the only employee of the organization?
We have a part-time term administrative coordinator, but I'm the only full-time staff member for the organization. Within our operating agreement, we're actually capped at 2 full-time staff, which is something eventually we have to look at relative to the growth strategy for the society, but we don't have plans to hire full-time staff this year, just based on the reality of our infancy and the fact that we need to build these foundational projects, which is primarily project and consultant focused in this initial year. My hope is that we'll take an informed approach to growing our team next year, and we'll be a little bit more in a ready state to do that by then.
Where are you physically located?
Right here, right now. No, that's my funny way of saying we don't have an office. It's
Okay.
remote based. But I'm around town all the time. I go into our coffee shops, our wonderful foyer at the Rathieson Community Center, and I stay visible in the community.
Yeah, I can see that would be important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talbot?
First of all, welcome back, Nick, and enjoyed working with you previously when you're here, and I'm sure you'll do a good job in your new role. A couple of things. The first thing is the provincial budget. Tourism actually was spared, and probably the spending envelope was increased a bit. So that doesn't mean anything to me, but does it mean something to you in terms of local impact?
Yeah, I don't. For sure, it does mean something to us. Our region was impacted by that. I think my friends behind me might be touching on those types of things in this next presentation. But there was some impact there relative to museum in the region that was part of the closures that were announced. And also there's impact to the visitor economy across Nova Scotia that could have indirect or direct impacts to us. So the Visitor Information Center at the airport was one. That was one of the provincial visitor information centers that was closed. So I don't know the magnitude of the impact, but all I can say is that it just reiterates the importance for us, especially within our rural communities, but across the board in the region, to ensure that we're listening and we're hearing what the pain points are relative to our visitor economy, and that we're staying nimble and flexible to best support them.
Okay, I realize it's early days. Thank you. The other thing is that I lived and worked in Cape Breton when Celtic Colours was born, and the specific intent of that particular festival was to increase the business during the shoulder season. And just wondering if you're looking at that type of approach here in Truro, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one big hit like Celtic Colors, could be a number of smaller things, but is that part of your strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. The STEP strategy actually outlines that very clearly, that we need to be focused on building off-peak season and shoulder seasons and leaning our resources into those areas. It's built within the framework of our event investment strategy as well, and we look at major events. We're measuring and evaluating that as well. If, an event, the same event hosted in July, we would see differently if it was hosted in January, and that accounts for that, the need to our businesses during that time. That's one of the merits of Nova Scotia Music Week 2, hosted in November, and that shoulder season. We looked at that when we evaluated that opportunity and the investment that's required, which brings significant tourism impact during that time of year. And I believe it was part of the rationale for the Winter Festival too, and looking at how we expand and grow that festival in the January, February season. So absolutely. And it's great to see you again too. I appreciate that.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how are you going to measure success? Like, what are the metrics that are you going to collect any metrics to determine success, like increase in night stays during certain times of the year or whatever? I don't know what they are, but are you planning to measure success?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of our corporate strategy. So on the leisure market and on the event attraction side, it's critical that we take a data-informed approach, and to do that, then we need to measure it. If we can't measure it, then it doesn't matter. That's
Right,
kind
because
of the
sometimes
philosophy.
when we hold events, some people are worried about the fact that, people come from Halifax and we're only an hour away. So rather than staying the night and maybe going out for a meal here, they head home.
Yeah.
So they come for the event and then they go home.
Yeah.
And so we don't get the full benefit of
Yeah.
of all the economic spin-offs of a particular event, of people
Yeah.
coming, staying, spending their money,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to know, which events are, and whether or not the whole effort is really being worth it as far as the people that have invested in this whole.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that different measurement techniques will take place for different scales of event as well. So when we look at a major event that requires significant investment, we would do a full economic impact study, and there's lots of different models out there. I know for the Stampede, for instance, or the World Under-17 Hockey Challenge, it was Steam Pro that was used, and it takes into consideration the overnight stays as part of the process, and that's how we get to the final number of the total impact in the region. And then smaller scale events, we would have different measurables, but it's still important to measure the data and the impact. So it could just be number of participants coming from out of the region, or size of marketing campaign that with traffic from outside the region, if we're talking smaller or moderate size events. So that's all part of the process as well. But it's not just on the event side. We need to measure the impact of our efforts on the leisure tourism side too, to ensure that wherever we're investing these funds, we can determine if it's effective or not in growing visitation.
And some of these outcomes are very positive, but more soft in the sense that, it becomes the quality of life for people living in the town is increased, which is hard to measure, but it's real.
It's a changing trend of how we see tourism across the world, actually, we used to think it was about the people coming into a region, and now we see it more about the people that's living in our region. And if it's good for our residents, then it's good for the people coming into our region. And it all kind of works together and raises the quality of life for everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the end of our questions. So I want to thank you, Mr. Sharp, and I hope with this new society, and the words of Star Wars, we do go where no one's gone very before. So let's live long and prosper. And thank you for that. Look forward to good things.
Thank you, Mayor
so much,
Hinton.
Nick.
Thank you, members of council.
So now our next agenda item is going to be with the Chamber of Commerce. Come forward. So with the recent provincial budget, I met with the Chamber in my office and I asked if they would speak to council today. And I'm so pleased to have Lexi Genowitz and Chelsea Barnhill Weatherby here with the Truro Chamber of Commerce. But before we hear the presentation, we do have a truly amazing Chamber of Commerce, and recently that was made quite evident. And so I just want to say, Chelsea, on behalf of the Truro Town Council, we are pleased to congratulate you, Chelsea Barnhill Weatherby, Membership and Special Projects Coordinator, Truro and Colchester Chamber of Commerce, on being named 2025 Staff Person of the Year at the Chamber of Commerce Executives of Canada, Mississauga, Ontario. You have been instrumental in driving economic development for local businesses, and we salute your hard work and dedication to your community. You continue to make a difference for the betterment of all businesses, which make our town a great place to live and work. With appreciation and respect, I have a certificate for you today that I've signed as mayor, and I think a well-deserved round of applause is appropriate. Come on up and get that certificate. Turn around, we'll get a little picture here. Another round for Chelsea. I know she doesn't like surprises, but into each life a little rain must fall. So now Leslie Genowitz is the executive director, and she's going to do a presentation, and we're so excited to have you here today, Chelsea. Or Lexi and Chelsea. Chelsea's going to be there for support, so just whenever you're ready, take it away. Yeah, just push the button and I'll turn the light on for you. There we go. You're good to go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Hinton Council, for inviting us to come and present today. I would usually introduce myself, but I think you did that quite aptly for both myself and Chelsea. Of course, I am the Executive Director of the Truro and Colchester Chamber of Commerce. I've been in the role for just over a year now, moved to the area for the role, and have been loving it. Chelsea has been fantastic as our Membership and Special Projects Coordinator, of course, obviously as our 2025 Staff Person of the Year. And we also now have a third employee, a part-time employee, Sandy Bowden. She's our Operations Administrator, and while she's not here today, she's been a very important part of our team. So just a little bit of who we represent. We currently represent about just over 500 members in our chamber, so that looks like 3,000 employees across our region. We are the second largest chamber of commerce in Nova Scotia, which means that we hear from a wide range of businesses about what's working well locally and where challenges exist. So just to give you guys a little bit more statistics on our membership, 80% of our members currently employ less than 10 employees, 10 or less employees. Which means that a lot of our businesses are small, locally owned and operated. They're our employers, they're our supporters, they're sponsoring events, they're helping stimulate our local economy. And to give you guys a little bit more data, 55% of our membership is currently located in Truro. So it means a lot of the conversations that we're having directly affects our area, Truro specifically, and are those types of conversations. So of our membership, just to give you guys a little bit of the diversity of our membership, our 5 largest sectors is retail, food and beverage, nonprofits, construction and trade, and automotive and transportation. So they're our largest sectors within our membership, and they're a lot of the key drivers within our community as well. So as you know, a big role that we play within the community is advocacy. And I know sometimes that word can sound a little intimidating or scary because advocacy can sometimes look a little intimidating. But I think for us, it really means making sure that you, the decision makers, have a clear understanding of what's going on in the business community and what businesses are experiencing on the ground day to day. Businesses see things that aren't always in reports or in policies. They see how workforce shortages are affecting their operations, what housing availability might impacts hiring, and how transportation options affect employees getting to work. Our role is to listen to those experiences and then bring that information forward in a constructive way. So ideally, that information becomes an opportunity, not for conflict, but for collaboration and to build practical solutions that support businesses and the broader community. So I know at the recent AGM, Mayor Hinton and Councillor Pryor were there, and we talked about a couple different advocacy priorities, which included the Accessibility 2030 deadline, workforce sustainability, immigration policy, population growth, the provincial budget impacts, and some of the discussions regarding governance with the REC. And many of these issues do involve multiple levels of government, but ultimately they connect back to the same goal: ensuring that our region remains a place where businesses can grow and where people want to live and work. So we've outlined some of the top priorities from our membership that affect local, and we'll kind of walk through some of that for you. So workforce sustainability is a regular conversation that we're hearing. Businesses are increasingly thinking about the workforce that's currently available in the region. According to the 2021 Stats Canada census, the average age in our region is 46.2 years old, and I know that's 2021 and we're now in 2026, but there's no current data at the moment. But I do know Stats Canada has started doing a little bit of outreach about that, so hopefully we'll get more up-to-date figures soon. But because of this, our employers are beginning to think about what workforce renewal will look like as people continue to retire in the coming years. And that's where a lot of that conversation comes from regarding population growth and immigration becoming increasingly important. Research from organizations like ISED consistently show that population growth supports local economies by expanding the labor force, increasing consumer spending in local businesses, and strengthening the tax base that communities rely on to support infrastructure and services. In practical terms, that really looks like more people living and working in the region means more customers supporting local businesses and more economic activity circulating throughout the community. So for regions like ours, thoughtful population growth helps support workforce sustainability and contributes to long-term prosperity in the economy. Now, as we kind of talk on workforce sustainability, that's a very layered problem, as I've said, where we're looking at immigration, as we're looking at population growth. But one of these things is also public transit. As some of you may know, I'm on the advisory committee for the transit feasibility study, and transit really does play a critical role in connecting people with employment opportunities. We see research coming from organizations such as the Canadian Urban Transportation Association and the Canadian Infrastructure Council, which shows that transportation plays a direct role in economic participation. When people can access reliable transportation, they're more able to reach their employment opportunities, education, services, and that ultimately strengthens our local economy. Many of our businesses in the region see public transit as the tool to get them the workforce they need. As we've talked with some of our members, when they're looking at hiring new employees and they're asking if they have reliable transportation to work every day, that answer is not always yes. And when it isn't yes, they're unable to hire those people who are looking for a job. And those roles aren't getting filled. So having that public transportation in place really can help our businesses, our employees, anyone who's looking for a job, and really stimulate our economy. Another topic that we've been working on recently has been Accessibility 2030. Now, I know that Accessibility 2030 is a standard that has been set by the province, but a lot of our businesses are looking to see what that impact will look like locally. What that will change when they come into the town office and start applying to build. They want to know what timelines are looking like, costs look like, and what changes might need to be made. So we've been working with Minister Ritzy's office, as well as the town of Truro and Village of Bible Hills EDIA coordinator, Nikki Gillis, as well as Municipality of Colchester's EDIA coordinator, Sarah Pearson, to be able to bring forward clear information that we can communicate to the business community as a whole. That's really what our businesses are looking for. They're looking for clear communication to have the answers they need easily accessible. Now, Mayor Hinton, I know you kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, the provincial budget impacts. I know that's kind of part of the reason why we were invited here today. So we've been engaging in conversations with our membership about what the provincial budget currently looks like and what those impacts and changes mean for our region. While last week some of the funding was returned to the community, we're still seeing approximately a reduction of 2.5 million from our community. Last week that number was looking at 2.6, this week it's 2.5. So while we're happy to see that some money has made it back into the community, that's still a significant amount being reduced. And when you consider that many of these nonprofits and community organizations are seeing the cuts, they tend to, the return on investment for every dollar that's invested in a nonprofit or community organization generates about $1.50 to $7 worth of impact into our local economy. So if we just simply say that the 2.5 million is double, based off of the return on investment into our economy, that's about $5 million being removed from our local economy. We've seen approximately 30 jobs, both full-time, part-time, permanent, seasonal, and contract-based, being impacted, and that's happening right here in our region. We're seeing cuts to healthcare, nonprofits and community organizations, economic development. For example, TCPEP is seeing a 20% reduction, as well as the funding structure is changing, and who that funding pool is available to has opened up to outside just the rents. So while it looks like a 20% right off the bat, based off of the calculations the rents have been doing, it's looking more like it might impact them up to 50%. Many of our community organizations have been told that they will be receiving budget cuts, but have not been given a percentage or a dollar amount quite yet, and that they will be receiving them within the coming months. So while the funding really is coming from that provincial outlook, this does affect us here in town, in Truro, in Colchester, and really impacts our local economy and the help that people can get. So after that, I'm going to try and lighten the mood a little bit and talk about tourism. Tourism has always played a very important role to our local economy. If you look at it from a provincial standpoint, tourism generates about $30 billion for the provincial, the provincial, yeah. And of that, we've seen from last year to this year, tourism has grown 8.3%. But locally, we manage, the Chamber manages 9 community visitor information centers. Of those 9 community visitor information centers, we see exactly 40,193 visitors in our area. That's an increase of 15% compared to pre-COVID visitation levels and a 16% increase from 2024. That really gives us a good sense of the level of visitor activity and economic stimulation that's happening through our region. Now, at the moment, there isn't a community visitor information center in the town of Truro, so we don't have any data about what that impact looks like here in town. The closest visitor information center is the Fundy Discovery site. So anytime any tourist is looking for information here in town, they're being directed back out to the highway to get that information that they could also receive here. So, tourism we're seeing great increases on, and is continuing to impact our local economy in great ways. And our community visitor information centers will continue to receive their funding going forward with the provincial budget. So we're very happy to see that they will be unaffected at this time. Now, that was most of my presentation. And before I wrap up, I really do want to highlight that one of the strengths of our region is collaboration. We work very hard with a lot of our partners, like TCPEP behind us, who's here to support us, as well as Nick with the Central Nova Scotia Tourism. And it really makes a difference to our local economy when we see these economic players work together, and to work together the way that we have been and continue to work to do to drive change in our communities. So yes, thank you so much for having us, and we're always happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I really appreciate your wonderful presentation, and I think one of the things when I became mayor was, and as you can attest to, and the wonderful people from TCPEP, is my door is always open, and we do have regular communication, which I think is absolutely so key, as well as DTP. I like to have those meetings on a regular basis, just so we know exactly what's going on. Back to the budget. I've went through this twice myself when I worked for the province. It's devastating. And this is the first year of these realignment or cuts, so it's early stages. So, but of course, when it impacts our local residents, economy, businesses, it's painful, it hurts, and we're very concerned. So, we know things have to be done, budgets have to be tightened, but it's never easy when you're watching the impact at a local level. Councillor Graham?
I'm just wondering, I found it very interesting, your comment about the town of Truro not having a dedicated visitor information center. And it's the way you phrased it, that we're sending people back out to the highway. That is very disappointing. Is there a plan or thoughts? I don't recall that a request has been made of investing in a tourist center through the town. Maybe there has been a request and I'm just unaware of it. But I wonder if there is thought of partnering with Mr. Sharp, with our TCPEP, yourselves, us. Like, is there a plan or thoughts or a request?
I know the town used to have a visitor information center up until 2020, I believe. And we are currently in communications with different organizations to see who could have that visitor information center in town, who has the operational capacity to be able to, from April to October, be able to collect the data, who's coming into our area, where they're coming from, what those numbers look like, as well as be able to direct them to the businesses within our region. So we are hoping that, based off of our conversations, both with the provincial government and these organizations, that we should have one this summer. Now, that's all in the motions right now, but yes.
So, Mr. Dalter, have we considered partnering in this idea?
Well, I've heard of it, but we do fund one of the positions at the Fundy Discovery Center as well too. So one of those positions is there, and one of the thoughts, the reason we do that is when people are out in the highway, a lot of times they drive by, but when we have somebody in the Discovery Center greeting them as well too, we direct them into town, because some people don't. A lot of people don't make their way in, and that's a way of doing it. We've looked at different. The main reason why we closed it down is the building that we had, and we didn't have another building to offer, is can't be used anymore.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason. We had, in fact, the chamber hosted a site on Prince Street at least one of the summers or during the season as well too. So we'll look at options for bringing tourists in. Like I said, right now we are working with the Discovery Center and with the county on that option. If we can find something that works in town and that goes past the summer season, because we do rely on summer student funding for tourism as well too. We don't have a dedicated, even a part-time position in order to do that. And that was one of the values of parting with the chamber a few years ago, is they had somebody available to staff the location they had on Prince Street. So again, it's something we can certainly work with the chamber on, and we can discuss. But again, we just need to look what the opportunities are and see how it goes forward.
Yeah. And the staff at the Fundy Discovery site through the summer tend to send at least one student to Civic Square, just to get some of that downtown traffic. But we don't see those specific numbers at all. Those aren't tracked as Civic Square type of thing.
And we did look at the options too. We were looking at actually establishing not a pop-up, but having some presence in the Civic Square area, because that's where most people head naturally anyways, and just having somebody direct what was going on there and giving information. We did do a kiosk in Town Hall as well too with information. So we are looking at some options where we don't have a permanent location at this point that really works, right? So,
Yeah, I just think it's important that we as the town remain engaged and at the table when those discussions are happening. Thank you.
We've had this conversation many times in the chamber about tourism.
Yeah.
And they are working on it. And they know as soon as they've got it together, they're going to bring it to council. We've had this conversation many times, as you know. I don't want to see those tourists pass by.
No.
They need to come into town, they need to spend dollars, they need to be in our community. And so you know how passionate I am about that.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited, and I'm hoping that this is the time that we can make this happen. So,
Yeah.
because we've talked about this a great deal, and I'm excited so we can bring something to council.
Yeah, very good.
Councillor McGrath, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you both for the presentation. I'll echo Councillor Graham's concerns. The words of "we're sending people back out toward the highway" scares me a lot. That is a frightening thing to hear, because I feel like people might get confused, or if they get frustrated, they're just like, well, I'm at the highway, and they'll just keep going. And what a terrible loss that would be for both sides, honestly. With regards to just talking about like having people at Civic Square, I wonder if even just having an occasional table at the market, or if that person pops by the market, because I'm at the farmer's market every Saturday, or just about every Saturday. And I do run into people who are visiting, who are passing through, and it's wonderful to see them. I talk to folks down on Inglis Place who say, oh yeah, people mention they've come here for the market, and then they're over here shopping, so there may be some use there in having someone to help guide people. Accessibility, we talked about a little bit about accessibility.
Yes.
How are we working with a lot? Because I mean, this is something that's close to my heart. I chair the Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee. New builds, easy. 100-plus-year-old buildings, less easy.
Less easy. Yeah.
How are we really approaching accessibility for a lot of the businesses, especially downtown in some of these older buildings where accessibility was never thought of, 50 or 100 years ago?
What we're trying to do is get the information from the Directorate of Accessibility with Nova Scotia. As it currently stands, if there is no changes being made to the building before April this next month, they shouldn't need to make any changes. And then as soon as we kind of get into the talk of heritage buildings, it becomes one-on-one conversations with the province and sometimes also with the municipalities. That's kind of what we've been hearing. So we are continuing to try and get as much information as we can, but anytime anything is being changed within a building, if they're looking at moving the walls or anything like that, then they have to make the business or the building accessible. There are, at some points, those exceptions to the rules, but the Directorate is seeing it as a very case-by-case method.
Yeah, because that is something I have talked to some of the business owners, and they're like, I would love for this to be more accessible, but I don't have a whole lot to work with.
Yeah.
And especially for a small business, the cash outlay to make it accessible, it's just not feasible. The money's not there. Topic near and dear to my heart, public transit. So much so. I mean, you talked a lot about, getting people to work the jobs. Less so a little bit about people getting out to do the shopping. Like we talked briefly earlier, and actually I have extra copies. I would like to give you a copy of one of these letters afterward.
Absolutely.
But somebody who does not drive, who has difficulty getting around, wants to go do their shopping, public transit would make their life so much easier and would help support the businesses. There's so much benefit to public transit. I'm really looking forward to getting that feasibility study at some point. I know I've been asking about it for, I think probably every meeting since I've been on council I've talked about public transit.
Yes.
But it's nice to hear more data supporting the benefits that and that we need to consider when we're weighing those options.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you. Yeah, we were really talking about it from that member business perspective, because the businesses are really the ones kind of talking to us, and they're really looking to have those employees come to us or come to them. And when the employees are able to get to their jobs, then they're getting the money that they need to be able to take public transit to the grocery store or the hospital or those other services that they need. And it really comes from the fact that we need to make sure that when we're looking at transit, we're looking at it from how can it strategically position us and our economy to continue to grow and prosper.
Yeah, and that's another thing. The hospital, I talked to a number of people working at the hospital who are, like, public transit would be so useful for me, like, if, because they don't necessarily make a lot at the hospital, depending on what they're doing out there. It's, and I've heard a lot of people say, I really wish we had public transit, and especially if we worked a 12-hour shift and, our healthcare workers work hard. You might want to just, close your eyes and relax on the bus instead of actually doing the driving. But yeah, and then just, the students, I've talked to people, students over at the AC who would love to be working with a lot of the same type of stuff.
And yeah, public transit is really a great tool for our region to be able to promote itself, to get further people to move to the area and grow the area, whether it is for students or if it is for work. It's really a fantastic tool.
And you mentioned some stats earlier about, the dollars spent, like, so with the provincial budget cuts, that $2.5 million is actually going to be $5 million. Do you have similar impacts for public transit? So, like, every dollar invested into public transit results in, X number of dollars or cents, negative or positive toward society. Is that something you have in there? Just, again, we're talking about the benefit of the businesses and the students being able to work, et cetera.
From the research that I've read about public transit, there's very few that assigns a dollar amount to the economic impacts. And that's mainly because the urban areas impacts are a lot different from rural areas. And when they look at the impact on a region, they tend to only focus on urban areas or the entire country as a whole. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to assign dollar values.
Okay.
It's something we're continuing to research to see what that kind of looks like. And I do hope that with the feasibility study that they will have those dollar values in that.
I hope so too. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for the answers. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, when you talked about the various sectors that you represent, you didn't mention agricultural sector. And the reason I ask that is because, there's a large component of the businesses in town are agricultural based. They serve an agricultural industry in the rural areas. So do you have much participation?
So we do have some participation from the agricultural sector. Not as high as it has been in the past when we look at our history as a 136-year-old organization. 136 years ago, we had a lot of agriculture involvement in our chamber. We've seen that as new industries kind of come up and establish themselves here, that agriculture has started to taper off while they're still involved. There are many supports for agriculture-based businesses that are similar to a chamber of commerce and run the same types of roles as us. But so we do see agriculture, just not as large as a sector, because there are similar organizations to us that are specific for agriculture that
Okay,
work.
that's one question. The other question is, you talked about housing issues. I've been on council here for, I think, 5 years now, and during that time, I can't tell you the exact number, but it's in the hundreds of units that have been built and are ready for occupancy. So has that had no effect on the housing issue?
So
Because I talked to some people, and, these are developers, and they're saying, well, they're starting to, there's vacancies now. So I'm just wondering, is that a slide that needs updating, or are you aware, do you believe that the vacancy rate is still a pressure point?
So based off of the most recent conversations that we've had with some of our members, housing availability was still a concern of theirs. We're continuing to outreach with them, but we do see that there are vacancies coming up, and that's bringing more people to the area, especially as some of these new builds have become available to start renting. So that's always kind of a live conversation with our members where, like 2 months ago, they were saying, yeah, housing availability is something that we're seeing as a problem towards workforce sustainability, especially as they want to continue to bring on loads of people.
But there's several
but we're-
hundred still in the wings right now.
Yeah, but we're just starting to kind of see that change in the conversations, and not really to the point where I can go and say, yeah, there's vacancies, and our members aren't seeing that impact. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Talbot?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to touch on public transportation. I realize all the benefits that it has, but there's also some big drawbacks. There's a huge affordability issue. It's very difficult to get the ridership. Public transportation that I've looked at is heavily subsidized. You have a council that is adverse to raising taxes. So, where do we have a discussion that gets a lot broader where, affordability counts, it matters.
Absolutely.
And I'm not a pipe dreamer. I like to
Yeah.
talk in real terms.
Yeah.
So, and I don't expect you to have the answer to that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with public transportation, obviously that is kind of considered as a service that's provided to the community. But when you do see public transportation being implemented in communities, it does help with the bringing new people into the area. It does help with affecting the unemployment rate and lowering the unemployment rate. So I don't think it can solely be looked at as this is a cost to this area, so much as this is a tool to become an economic driver. Yes, it might cost us money up front, and it might look like a hefty bill up front, but the impacts, hopefully, with that feasibility study, we'll see that economically, there's a strong case for it with our business community, and that tax-based growth, the growth of the workforce in our area will help outweigh the cost to the municipality.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation today. I really appreciated you coming over and the candid conversations we have and presenting to council today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So this now brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank everyone and our presenters, Nick Sharp and Lexi Genowitz, and to TC Pep for being here in the gallery today to join us. The next Committee of the Whole meeting is Thursday, April the 16th at 4 p.m. Please continue to be kind to each other and to our town. And happy and smiling. We're adjourned at 5:16 p.m. We are adjourned. Stay tuned, Council, for an in-camera meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.